10 o'clock, so we'll get the meeting started. Before I do, if you've got mobiles or smartphones and you think you put them on mute, if you've also got Teams on it, it'll ring, as I discovered yesterday. So would you please turn your devices off, please, so we don't get disturbed during the meeting. Thank you. Apologies. We've got apologies from Gary Suttle. And for family reasons, he's not going to be able to be with us this morning. Declarations of interest, colleagues, cabinet colleagues? No. Usual thing. If you pick anything up during the debates, then please let me know. Oh. All right, Jill. No. I've got a hammer here, Jill. Would this help? Well done. Right, minutes of the meeting on the 26th of July. Can I sign those as true record? Agreed. Thank you very much. Public participation. We've got a number of questions this morning. The first 7 we're going to hear, and David Walsh will give a collective response because they're all similar. They're all based around concerns on the local plan, and it's quite right that the members of the public have the right to bring their questions to us. But David's pulled together a response to cover all 7 questions. Now, we've got Richard Thomas, who's attending remotely, so I'm going to give him the opportunity now to address the Cabinet. Richard Thomas.
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Sorry I can't be there in person, but I'm trying to save my miles. My question is in 2 parts. The first is as follows. On the 26th of July, Dorset Council announced that the council would pilot a new national approach to local planning with a 2-year delay to its own plan timetable for adoption in 2026. This announcement was promptly contradicted by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, DLUHC, who confirmed that a request for planning rule changes had been requested by Dorset Council, but that no such changes had been agreed. Will Councillor Walsh therefore please comment on when he expects to have a decision on the proposed changes to the Dorset local plan, the rule changes to the local plan, and confirm that the Council will continue to press the case for a change in the rules, with the new government? That's the first question. Do you want me to go on to the second one?
Yes, please.
Second question is, given the likelihood that developers are continuing and will continue to take advantage of the current situation for speculative development, what is his department doing or will do in the event that DLUHC does not grant Dorset Council sufficient dispensation against housing land supply restrictions and or an extension of the plan timetable? Those are my 2 questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. We've now got a further set of questions. Ian Wolfe, who I know isn't here, 2 questions from him and 2 questions from David Berry. I believe David Berry is going to be on remote and he's going to deal with all of the 4 questions. So can I invite him to speak, please?
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So these are the questions from Ian Wolfe. The portfolio holder for planning has proposed that the existing dates for adopting a new local plan be extended out until 2026, as per the table in Appendix 3, Dorset Council Plan Priorities Update Local Plan issued on the 26th July 2022. This appears to be based on the Department of Levelling Up and Housing Communities agreeing for Dorset to be a pilot for a new national approach to local plans. What does the portfolio holder propose to do if DLUC does not agree with Dorset being a pilot scheme? Second question from Ian Wolfe is, as per the table in Appendix A, Dorset Council Housing Delivery Test Results, Housing Delivery Action Plan, March 2022, only the old West Dorset and Weymouth and Portland 2015 local plan meets the 5-year housing supply for 2021. What does the portfolio holder for planning propose to do to maintain West Dorset and Weymouth and Portland to meet the required level and bring the rest of Dorset up to the required housing delivery out to 2026 when the new local plan is being developed? That's the questions from Ian Wolf. I'll now move on to my quote. Okay, if I move on to my questions now?
Please go on to your questions, thank you.
Okay. At the public documentation pack for this meeting, there is a table which proposes the delay of the local plan adoption from quarter 4 2023 to quarter 2 2026, a delay of 2 years 6 months. The same table includes that the publication pre-submission consultation with a footnote number 2 moved from quarter 2 2022 to quarter 4 2024. The footnote states that milestones based upon no further round of pre-submission consultation. If we have to consult on significant changes, there is a potential for the timetable to be extended. So that's the background. The question is, in the next issue of the Local Development Scheme Update, which I believe is the 4th of October, a period should be included in the revised dates to have public consultation for pre-submission significant changes. In fact, it is confusing that in July 2021, it was stated that by the portfolio holder that the publication stage will be for public comment, i.e. not consultation. But in July 2022, the publication was a pre-submission consultation document. Please can the portfolio holder clarify the Council's view on the proposed significant changes to the local plan and the current plans, including timescales, for all future public consultation stages of the revised local plan, including under what town and country planning, as Local Planning England regulations, they will be. My second question is, going forward, what constructive ongoing interaction can local residents groups and organisations who have registered concerns and comments on the draft local plan have direct with Dorset Council officials during the period of gathering further evidence and review until quarter 2 of 2024, including access to completed studies and reports? That concludes my questions.
Thank you very much. We got one further question from Mike Allen.
Chairman, at the last Cabinet, Councillor Walsh's statement on future housing developments in Dorset referred to the longer-term growth needs of Dorset. He also said that Dorset is planning ambitious growth. Estimates of housing needs are based currently on 2014 figures. Back then, the UK population was expected to grow rapidly for the foreseeable future. But falling fertility and rising numbers of deaths mean that much less growth is expected now, according to the ONS and the OBR. Indeed, the OBR has recently put forward a scenario in which the UK population would stabilise in growth in the 2030s. So assuming these phrases of Councillor Walsh are based on the Council's own research, what are the longer-term growth needs in Dorset referred to in the Cabinet statement of 26th July? And what is the Council's current justification for planning ambitious growth? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Can I invite David Walsh, please, to respond to those 7 questions? Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for bringing these questions to us today. It is obviously very important to Dorset, very important to all of us, and none more, though, than me, I can say. So, Chairman, I propose to answer questions 1 to 7 in a single response, as all these questions are about the local plan and raise similar issues. I will be considering a report on the revised local plan timetable at our next meeting in October. This will include a full revised local development scheme or local plan programme, setting out the dates for all the milestones along the way to adoption and the opportunities for involvement. Over the past few months, we have been in positive discussions with Michael Gove, the former Secretary of State for the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, with the Chief Planning Officer for England and other senior civil servants, and we have been encouraged to continue this dialogue. I refer you to my statement to Cabinet of the 26th of July, which can be found in the appendix of the draft minutes. We have had to delay the programme because of the time needed for additional evidence work, particularly relating to nutrients in Poole Harbour, following the recent letter from the Government's Chief Planner. The Government will work on the preparation of the Dorset Council local plan on the new timetable. We are, of course, anticipating changes in the national planning system, as set out in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, and will make changes to our plan in the light of those. They are expected to include changes to the current duty to cooperate and to the methodology for working out housing requirements. In the meantime, in areas where we have not met the requirements for the 5-year housing land supply or housing delivery test, we will need to take this into account when considering planning applications. Any new pieces of evidence prepared for the local plan will be published online as soon as they are available. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. We've now got a question from Colin Tracy, which Giles Watts, I believe, is going to read.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It is ironic to be reading this question out today, just after a deluge of rain yesterday. Most people have been shocked by the drought this summer, with the highest temperatures ever recorded, leading to wildfires, water shortages, and the destruction of much wildlife. Nearly everyone agrees that we need to act now to reduce the impact of climate change and protect our environment. Dorset Council has made strong efforts to address its own carbon emissions, which we applaud, but has done little to address the other 99% of emissions in Dorset. Will Dorset Council work with other like-minded local organisations and the general public to tackle this urgent issue and to put resources towards reducing emissions in the wider county and providing mitigations against the effects of climate change? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite Councillor Ray Bryan to respond, please.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Tracy, for the question. Dorset Council is committed to working and engaging with a range of partners and stakeholders to deliver the ambitions set out in the Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy. Work is continuing to strengthen engagement and partnership working in this area.
Thank you, Ray. Giles, you've got a second question.
Thank you. Yes, I have two questions, in fact. We are in the midst of a very damaging cost of living crisis, which is being fuelled by very high energy prices. Will the Council support some simple practical ideas that will help to reduce costs, such as helping people to put solar panels on their roofs, retrofitting insulation, and supporting community energy projects, which often generate electricity at rates far below the national capped rate? And the second question is, do you think that Dorset would benefit from its own energy strategy that will provide a route map of how Dorset will supply its future energy needs, whilst also supporting local businesses and complying with its ambitions for reducing carbon emissions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite Ray Bryan to respond, please.
Yes, if I can split those two questions up with answers, please. In answer to your first question, and first of all, can I thank you for always showing interest in what we do within Dorset Council, and hopefully I can rely on your support going forward. But in answer to your first question, the Council is working closely with a range of partners to support residents through the cost of living crisis. Current advice and support is available from the Dorset For You web pages. Support includes additional investment in the Healthy Homes Dorset programme, which can offer free, impartial energy advice, and for eligible residents, free loft and wall insulation. Free heating improvements may also be available. Further opportunities for accelerating the energy efficiency schemes and community energy continue to be explored. In answer to the second question, This is identified as one of the actions within the Dorset Council Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy and Work, which continues to explore how best this can all be achieved. I would ask everybody that's interested in climate change to keep their eyes on the websites, because there's lots of information that comes out on a regular basis. So you will probably get a lot of answers from that to the questions that you're currently asking.
Thank you very much, Ray. And the last question, actually, the person isn't here. We're going to take that as a written question where there will be a written response. And I don't intend to ask the portfolio holder to respond in the meeting, but the written response will be available on the website after the meeting. So now we move on to the forward plan. Colleagues on the Cabinet, you've seen the forward plan. It sets out our business for the next 4 months. Is there anybody disagreeing with the forward plan as set out? If I hear silence, I'll assume that's no. I've got Laura Miller. Sorry, Beddoe.
Thank you. I think you missed the question from Councillor Kimber.
I did, and that wasn't done deliberately, Paul, I promise you. It nearly fell off the bottom of my page. You're in the wrong place. You're normally in the middle here. I can see you then. We've got we got a question from members, and it's one question today from Paul Kimber, which I neatly managed to sidestep, but not intentionally. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. No harm. It is obviously a tough meeting, the Cabinet meeting, and I accept it. I was just about to put my hand up. Thank you, Laura. Obviously, some of the figures here have been revised since I've written the question, so it might some of the figures might feel a bit as though they're dated, but the element of the basis and the element of the question is still there. Councillors, I'm asking the question as to what provision this council is making for the next winter to support the most vulnerable in our Dorset community. As you know, Martin Lewis has painted quite a bleak picture on energy bills and food pricing, which are set to rise dramatically. An average family bill is forecast to raise around about 3,600 this autumn, to rise to 4,200 in January 2023. The latest 2021 census results for Dorset now show 112,300 people aged 65 and over at 29.6% of the population, compared to 24.6% in 2021. The national figure is 16.4%. If no action is taken to support Dorset's ever-growing elderly population, as our social services will be put under even more severe pressure. What is Dorset Council doing? What are our plans to deal with the elderly who will be facing dramatic financial hardship, our residents with disabilities who cannot leave home or need to be kept warm, the Dorset families of all whom will have difficulty in managing? Thank you. I submit this question, Chair.
Thank you very much, Paul. Can I invite Laura Beddoe to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Paul, for your question. Just to preface this update, the Leader of the Council did make reference, and in his July report, leaders briefing, to Cabinet and outlined some of this work. So this is by way of an update. We've got some updated figures, and hopefully that's helpful. So the Exec Director for Corporate Development, Aidan, Dan, has brought together a network of officers and representatives from the community and voluntary sector to coordinate a response to the cost of living and crisis, using the Dorset Together model of network support, which we successfully used for other issues such as COVID and the Ukraine response. That network, we've been focusing on direct financial aid, better access to housing services, encouraging people to act early if they have concerns, and signposting to support on debts, benefits, budgeting, food, housing and mental health. So just some of the highlights in terms of the data. Our cost of living help campaign was launched in partnership with Dorset Together in June, on the 15th of June. And we've got a new cost of living help webpage with key messages for residents on our website. By the end of August, Dorset Council had paid £150 energy rebates, totalling over £15.8 million to 105,660 households. We are currently processing the final claims that have been received, and those households which are eligible but who have not submitted a claim will have their £150 council tax energy rebate paid directly onto their council tax account by the end of September. An £877,000 discretionary fund is open for applications soon, with the awards processed by the end of November. We're working closely with Citizens Advice and Age UK to offer help and advice and make sure that people are getting the support they need. We continue to administer the government's Household Support Fund, and that supports households with children, adults of pensionable age and other households, including those with disabilities. This is providing support with energy and food costs and is open for applications until the 30th of September. So in the 6-month period, April to September, it amounts to just over £2.2 million. And there will be further funding available for the next 6 months as well. Also promoting the uptake of free school meals, Healthy Start vouchers, and we've used funding from government to provide free school meal vouchers in the holidays, delivered the Summer in Dorset programme, the holiday and food activities to low-income families, and a range of free activities for children with special educational needs and disabilities. In addition to that, our housing team has recently introduced a single number for all housing inquiries and a new triage team to ensure those who most urgently need help get help first. I would add to this response as well that we don't know who's going to be in position in government, but as soon as they are, we will be making contact with them, because some of this is without our control. And although we have a really robust response to the cost of living, the wider issues really need to be addressed by government. So we will be lobbying very strong as soon as the appointment is announced. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Laura. Paul, you got a supplementary?
If I could thank Laura for her concise statement and the statement from this council, which, 99% of it I actually welcome. I believe for all of us, it's going to reach out for our communities. And it's rather like this morning, there's a group that's come up from Portland to a course here, and I was pleased to see that, because I think some of our communities that are spread around, sometimes this council can seem a long way away. And what I was also after as well was that coordination with our parish town councils that can bring about a warm banks, as they're now being called. So if that could be within the consideration, that would be very welcome. Thank you.
Laura?
Thank you. I think that we have got a meeting in the diary to discuss that exact issue. Your point about how we coordinate across all our partners, especially town and parish councils, because they are the front line often for people, is a really good one. I'm speaking at the Clerks Conference next week and talking about our relationship and how we work together and make sure that we do reach out to everyone who needs it. So thank you.
Right, we'll have another go at the forward plan now that I skipped to just slightly earlier. So you've all seen the forward plan. It does set out our business for the next 4 months. Are you all, if I don't see anybody nodding in disagreement, are you all content?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Let's go on to agenda item 7, additional procurement forward plan. And in Gary's absence, I'm going to invite Jill Haynes to present the report, please.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry, let's bring that down a bit lower. People can. The microphone works a bit better then. The Council defines key decisions as those with financial consequences of more than £500,000. We, in March of this year, created a procurement plan for the year 22-23, and this was agreed on the 1st of March Cabinet. In that report, it stated that obviously plans are in development as we go forward, and there will be occasions when we need to move forward further approvals for requests for spend over 500,000, and that's what this paper is about today. There are a number of these in Appendix 1. I'm just going to read the recommendation leader, and then if anybody wants to ask questions on those items, then we'll go to that. So, Cabinet is asked to consider the contents of this report in respect of the proposed contracts as set out in Appendix 1, which are in addition to those that were in the original forward plan. And that 1, we begin to begin each procurement process as listed in this report, and 2, that in each instance, the further step of making any contractual award should be delegated to the relevant Cabinet portfolio holder after consultation with the relevant director, executive director. So that's all I'm going to say about it. It does what it says on the tin, basically. So if anybody else wants to talk about any of those other requests, I'm happy to attempt to answer, particularly if I can.
Thank you very much, Jill. Any non-cabinet member wishing to speak on this item? I don't see anybody put their hands up, so I'll assume that is not the case. So therefore, can I seek a seconder? Peter Wolf, I think.
Happy to second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think, Jill, thank you very much for standing in Gary's absence. You're quite right, the report does set it out pretty clearly, the Appendix 1 being the key bit here, because it sets out what we're agreeing to this morning. So, Cabinet colleagues, any comments? If not, I will move to any members of the Cabinet who disagree with the recommendation set in the report. Do you want to come back, Jill?
Please. I would just like to say that we've got some pretty hefty spends in here, and one of the things that probably comes to people's attention is the Microsoft license. This is not something that we negotiate. This is negotiated nationally for councils, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Very good point. Thank you for that, Jill. So, as I say, the recommendations are set out. Anybody disagreeing? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. So we move on to agenda item 8, Strategic Community Infrastructure Levy. I hand over to David Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to take a few minutes to go through this because, well, all of the work that we do is very, very important. But this is so important because we work so closely, Dorset Council, with the town and parishes and the money that is spent with the town and parishes. So, Dorset Council collects community infrastructure levy to help contribute towards the provisional infrastructure to support the needs of new development. Governance arrangements established by Dorset Council in 2020 enable expressions of interest to be made to access funding across a wide variety of infrastructure types. And following a period of assessment, this report sets out projects which have been recommended for SIL funding approval. Governance arrangements are in place to assist Dorset Council with the delivery of infrastructure funding by Community Infrastructure Levy SIL. These arrangements enable expressions of interest to be made for strategic community infrastructure levy funding. Now, everyone, strategic SIL is the proportion of SIL retained by the Dorset Council once it has transferred the neighbourhood proportion to the town or parish where development takes place. A small percentage of each SIL payment is recovered to support the cost of administrating the levy. And so the strategic proportion accounts for 80% of the amount paid where there is no adopted neighbourhood plan and 70% where there is. Dorset Council has collected SIL effectively for many years, taking over responsibility from predecessor councils. The governance arrangements recognised the infrastructure priorities of the predecessor councils and have ensured that those priorities would be delivered through future spending opportunities. The first round of strategic SIL expenditure took place in November 2020, with recommendations passing to Cabinet in January 2021. Approximately 3 million of strategic SIL was approved to help deliver 37 different infrastructure project proposals. Now, Appendix 1 provides a schedule showing progress with the delivery of projects recommended for funding through round 1. And in summary, circa 1.52 million of round 1 SIL funded projects are underway or complete. 1.4 million of round one SIL funded projects are not started, of which 100,000 no longer required funding, and these funds are therefore available for round two. They are not lost, they go back into the pot for round two. Circa 1.55 was unclaimed in round one. A member-led post-decision review of SIL expenditure then followed in 2021 to ensure that the information about SIL was being communicated appropriately and infrastructure delivered in the right place at the right time. Key changes and actions from the review included the need for further upfront engagement with town and parish councils, and for Dorset Council members to raise general awareness of the process and spending opportunities. Participants were informed in advance of the second strategic SIL spend opportunity, which took place between the 16th of May and the 10th of June this year. Town and parish councils were encouraged to collaborate with Dorset Council service areas on the development and submission of expressions of interest for funds available by category. All Dorset Council members, service managers and previous participants were informed of this further spend opportunity with approximately 4 weeks' notice given before the window opened. There were 34 expressions of interest received for round two. Each submission has since been assessed and scored by members of the SIL team using the approved scoring matrix. Appendix 2 provides a full breakdown of all expressions of interest received, along with assessment scores and the reasons behind each recommendation. 3 expressions of interest were received from town councils, but as I explained in paragraph 1.2 of this report, town and parish councils automatically receive a portion of SIL receipts when chargeable development takes place in their area, and Dorset Council updates a published record of neighbourhood SIL monies passed down every 6 months. Where town councils have made expressions of interest, their published accounts were checked to establish the availability of neighbourhood SIL, and where it was established that there was sufficient unallocated neighbourhood SIL funds held by those town councils to cover the full cost of their respective project proposals, their expressions of interest have been recommended for refusal. So, Chairman, in summary, 17 expressions of interest are recommended for approval, including proposals for school improvements serving Ferndown and Send across Weymouth and Portland and West Dorset areas. These expressions for schools alone represent nearly 1 million. 15 expressions of interest totalling 400,000 are recommended for refusal. 2 expressions of interest have potential to be funded entirely by other forms of developer contribution funding. All recommendations have been presented to Capital Strategy Asset Management Group, who help oversee the implementation of the SIL governance process. The group met in July to review outputs and to recommend them for consideration to Cabinet. Recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David, for a very comprehensive presentation. Can I seek a seconder? Tony Ferrari. I'm going to open up to non-Cabinet members and see David Gray. David.
Thank you, Chair. A very small point of detail, really, given that we're going to discuss Redlands later on. On page 53 of the SIL paper, GR1027, it shows an amount of £50,000 which was awarded in round one, but not yet used. It's still red with the tag that clarity on ownership. I'm just checking that, given that we're going to talk about Redlands next, that 50,000 is included in the exempt papers later on, but I'd expect that to be green. So just a minor point of detail. Thank you.
Do we have anybody in the room that can answer that, or can we take it away?
Well, no, Chairman. And we have Andy Galpin here, who is the Infrastructure and Delivery Planning Manager. If I could invite him to speak. Thank you, Chairman.
That balance is still remaining, so it's not lost. It is effectively part and parcel of the allocation going forward.
David's content with that response. Thank you very much for that. Anybody else not on the Cabinet? Tony Alford.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have a couple of probably fairly small points. And I first of all refer to paragraph 2.1, and it mentions an approved scoring matrix. And I'd be interested to know whether this matrix that is being used has been externally validated.
Okay, thank you for the question. It was a part of the original governance arrangements, which were considered by this Cabinet back in July 2020. The arrangements were formed following a bit of a desktop review of similar governance processes across other authorities, and it's typical kind of considerations that we would take into account to look at project delivery, timescales, deliverability and that sort of thing. So it has been approved as part of the original governance arrangements.
Okay, Tony? Thank you. Do you have another one?
Second question, which is that I'm looking just a bit beyond the information reported in this paper, really just to see if we can get a feel for SIL that's in the pipeline. So I can think of two respects where SIL might be in the pipeline, where projects have reached a stage where SIL can be invoiced, but the invoice has not yet been raised. And the second, perhaps, SIL in the pipeline is where there is SIL in planning approvals, where the invoicing conditions have not been met yet because the project hasn't started. So I just wonder whether in terms of management information, we have an understanding of all this SIL that is in the pipeline but has not yet been billed.
So our infrastructure funding statement, which we publish annually in December of each year, publishes the balances that we hold for all forms of developer contribution, whether that be Section 106 or SIL. As you said, it's a bit of it's a slightly sort of a picture that needs a bit of work, because we have monies which we have collected thus far since September 2019, when we drew a line in the sand for this process. There are monies that we have collected. There are monies that we've invoiced through development, and there are also monies that we anticipate to see from future development. What we do in our infrastructure funding statement is report on money that we have received and have collected. In terms of that last step, in terms of future money, it is a little bit unclear because it is dependent on the delivery of development. I can provide some further information for any members on this matter. As we said in the report, we are looking to come to members in the future, looking at future priorities around SIL spend beyond that September 2019 line in the sand, because we do clearly have further money to work with. I don't want to put a figure on it right now, because as I said, it is subject to change in future, but there will be a conversation to be had with members about how we spend the SIL that we've collected since September 2019, and will continue to collect through those charging schedules.
Thank you very much for that response as well. Can't see anybody else. So, Simon Christopher.
It is customary when I attend these meetings that I remind the portfolio holder for highways, and indeed yourself as leader of the council, of the need for safe walking and cycling in Broad Windsor, and I hope to continue that debate. And it would be amiss of me if I didn't mention that again this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Right, members of the Cabinet, any comments? Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sure you would expect me to welcome and support, of course, the investment in children's educational places, and particularly special educational needs. I'm very grateful to Councillor Walsh for drawing our attention to it in the report.
Thank you, Andrew. Anyone else? If not, does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We move on to agenda item 9, the Pan Dorset Safeguarding Children's Partnership. And I believe Andrew Parry and James Vaughan, the independent chair of partnership, will do a double act.
Thank you, Chair. If I may introduce. The Pan Dorset Safeguarding Children's Partnership is a statutory body which oversees multi-agency safeguarding services which cover the local Dorset and BCP council areas. The report updates Cabinet on Children's Safeguarding Partnership, and the annual report was 2021-22. It is recommended that Cabinet notes the overall report, suggesting any further changes, and the reason for the recommendation is the production of an annual report is a statutory responsibility, and therefore endorsement from all 4 statutory partners is a requirement. I note in the report, and I'm sure others have, that the budget for the body is £276,000, of which Dorset Council's contribution was some £72,000. Clearly, it reflects very much on the challenges during the pandemic, and of course, the challenge particularly around any form of face-to-face meetings required. We do have to highlight, and we can never escape the challenge of dealing with disrupting child exploitation, sexual abuse, the impact of domestic abuse on our children and young people, and of course, ways that we can start to address the access to the CAM service, which is so vital. Bearing in mind 74,300 children are our primary concern, it is extensive that we take good care of them as we possibly can, and I'm grateful to partners and agencies that support the work that Dorset Children's Services do. The report's author is James Vaughan, a familiar face to this council, I know, from a previous life. I hope his new role is one that he's thoroughly enjoying. I'd like to invite, with your permission, Chair James, to speak to the report and perhaps also some comment from the Executive Director as well.
Good morning, Chair and members. Thank you for the invitation to come along and talk to my report. It's a statutory obligation placed on me as the independent chair to produce an annual report, but it's very much a combination of the work of the 4 agencies, Dorset Council, BCP, the police and the CCG, and their work and endeavours during the year. I'll just point to the areas of challenge in the report and remind colleagues where we are prioritising over the coming years, and that is around tackling child exploitation, sexual abuse, particularly around intrafamilial abuse, recognising and responding to the impact of domestic abuse on young children, and there's a lot of work around that in the county, and to support children and young people in their well-being and their mental health. Just to remind colleagues that the multi-agency arrangements across Dorset are arranged in 2 ways, really. We have the Pan Dorset Safeguarding Children's Partnership, which is a strategic body supported by the executive directors from both the Dorset Council, BCP, but also the chief nurse from the CCG and the chief officer of police. We meet under my guidance and chairmanship monthly, and we have a planning day once a year. We have a review of that at the halfway through the year, and it's there that we set out priorities. What I've tried to do since taking up this role only last October is to ensure that as we set priorities, they're done so alongside the Adult Safeguarding Board and the Community Safety Partnerships to try and take account and work in as much synergy with other partnership arrangements as we can, and that's proved effective. And for instance, the chairs of those 3 bodies meet regularly. We meet again this afternoon. There are a few key things that we do in the partnership. The first is that we oversee and commission practice reviews to ensure that we take learning from practice. There's been three local child safeguarding practice reviews in the reported year, 2 in Dorset and 1 in BCP, and they are published through our website. We also support, and we get reports from the Child Death Overview Panel, which we share with Somerset, which gives us good data and information and reviews child death in the county, sadly. We also oversee and ensure that we are efficient and effective in the delivery of safeguarding training across all our agencies and the private sector. Hundreds and hundreds of our colleagues are put through that training, which is done on a self-sustaining basis in partnership. We also, through 2 place-based delivery boards, Here it's chaired by the Chief Executive, the Strengthening Service Board, so that the Dorset County matters can be dealt with effectively, and that's an effective board which I've been privileged to join recently. And through that as well, we have quality assurance arrangements as well. So as the Cabinet member has said, the annual report is written, it's been signed off by the Executive, but it's now before Cabinet recommended for sign-off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James and Andrew. James, very reassuring what you've had to say this morning, I'm sure. Can I seek a seconder? Laura, you second, you're nodding in agreement. Okay. Any non-Cabinet member wishing to comment on this item? Sarah.
Obviously, challenges for children are going to get probably worse during the economic downturn, and I'd just like to be assured that we are going to get regular updates as to how we are dealing with these challenges, so all councillors are aware of what's going on. Now, I've got a second point. On page 72, we talk about the voice of children and young people, and it's only, a lot of councillors are only aware of what young people do for this council when they read reports such as this. And young people and Dorset Youth Council and Dorset Youth Voice do such a lot for the Dorset Council, and it's very important that we do listen to their views. So can I make a suggestion that at every full council we have 10 minutes at the beginning of the meeting where representatives of Dorset Youth Council come along and tell us what they have achieved, because they are achieving such a lot for us, and most councillors are not aware of this. And if they actually stood in front of all councillors for 10 minutes in front of full council meetings, I think more people would be aware of all the good work they do for the council. I mean, we do listen to members of the public, we listen to everybody else, but we never listen to young people at full council meetings. So can I make that as a suggestion that we trial it at the October meeting and hopefully do it regularly at all full council meetings?
I'll take that request outside the remit of this meeting, if that's okay with you. Andrew.
Very much going to echo your comments there, Chair. I mean, obviously, it would require consideration and consultation with the Chair of Council, and that is not a matter for Cabinet today.
Turn myself on. Any other member of the Cabinet wishing to contribute to this item? Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Item 3 on the agenda, on the report states clearly that none arising on climate implications, but then goes on to say that because it's face-to-face, we're obviously having to use transport to get to and from those meetings. I fully understand why we need to do that, but this actually gives me the opportunity to grandstand on saying this is why we need to introduce our fleet of electrical cars that are made available to staff to get to and from this type of meeting. So thank you for giving me the ammunition. I'm looking at Aidan to see whether he's smiling or not, but he's got a smile on his face. So I shall pursue that to see what we can come up with. We are introducing electric vehicles, by the way, for the fleet use. So that's already on its way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. I can't see any other member of the Cabinet wishing to comment. So does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Move on to agenda item 10 now, the SEND Capital Strategy Implementation Plan. And I'm going to invite Tony Ferrari to introduce this report, and then we'll move on to Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. One of the earliest decisions that Dorset Council made was a really substantial contribution to special educational needs education. They're one of our very early Cabinet papers. So I'm delighted today to be bringing forward the next tranche of that investment. We made really substantial investment in Coombe House, and this is the next package of steps that we're taking in this area, which I'm very pleased to bring forward. And this is better than that in that we work with central government, and this package is allowing us to unhook a 42 million contribution from central government, for which we are enormously grateful. So the totality of what we're bringing forward is an enormous contribution for Dorset and for the children of Dorset. Now, there are 10 projects here, so to set a bit of expectation, we can't do them all at the same time, and they are variably complex, because some of them are simple buildings and some of them require land acquisition. So we won't deliver them all tomorrow morning, but this paper is designed to bring them forward as rapidly as we can. There are also competing priorities across the rest of the administration. So across children's, there are needs, but also across adults and place, there are various other needs. So we need to bring these forward in the context of all the other things that this council needs to do. But I'm delighted to be bringing the package forward. Now, I'm the assets portfolio holder, and the purpose of this paper isn't to build buildings, it's to do something better for the children of this county. So probably at that point it would be appropriate for me to hand over to Councillor Parry, who's the Children's Services Cabinet member. Thank you.
Thank you. As Councillor Ferrari very rightly says, when we established Dorset Council, we saw that as a fantastic opportunity to create the right platform to address some very long-held challenges that have been faced in the areas of meeting special educational needs sufficiency, particularly in county. And we can rightly say that much progress has been made. The starting point had to, of course, be forecasting the level of demand and need, and considerable work has gone into that. We have to reflect on the fact that back in 2014, at the point at which we moved from statements to educational healthcare plans, we had some 1,414 children and young people effectively in the educational healthcare plan. Today, that sits at 3,264, and we can predict there'll be further growth in those numbers going forward. So how do we go about meeting that need? Well, of course, one of our key aims has always been to try and increase capacity in county and county-wide. So whether you want to access facilities from your home in Stallbridge or Sutton Points, respective of my colleagues either side, or anywhere else across the county, it's imperative that we find ways of you getting a good quality education, meeting your needs, and our pledge to help every child thrive and to be the best they possibly can be. So we set out very clearly what we needed to do, and that was to increase capacity both in our mainstream schools and also in our special educational needs settings. Because let us not forget, by law, every child has an entitlement to a mainstream school place as their starting point. It is only when certain criteria has been identified in meeting their needs that we would then move into specialist settings. So I'm very pleased that the report is as comprehensive as it is. I think we can have confidence in what we're trying to achieve here. And as I've said, we are looking to achieve a number of factors. One is to increase capacity county-wide, but also the variety of meeting need, because in understanding special educational needs, we often talk about the spectrum, but it really is a spectrum of need. And some of that can be met at a relatively early level of intervention and maintain a mainstream setting. Whilst for others, of course, that will be a more complex need and a need that will last a lifetime. And so therefore, I welcome the report. I do want to ask the Executive Director and the Corporate Director for Education to also comment on this. But I think it's the realisation that we are in a place where we have the opportunity to meet demand, but also, as Councillor very rightly says, it's understanding how we roll out that programme of need, because that is going to be a challenge for us with competing requirements across other directorates as well.
Thank you very much, Tony and Andrew. Teresa.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ferrari and Councillor Parry. It is absolutely crucial for us, isn't it, that we close the achievement gap for so many of our children in these days when we want all of our children to thrive. And this gives us the opportunity to really work at the very beginning in our mainstream schools first. So our absolute strategy at the present time is around having inclusion being at the front and centre of everything we do. Now, sometimes that can seem odd when we're talking a lot about building special school places, but we need to do both things at once. And this gives us that opportunity to really include children in their mainstream sector, those networks of children staying in school but having a little bit of extra help to support them along their journey. And we know that many children during the COVID pandemic have found it harder to go back to school. We're just about to enter a time when the Children's Commissioner is looking very, very steadily at attendance. And that's for very good reason, because unfortunately across the country we have seen quite significant numbers of children not return to school. They are presently hidden, missing, not where they need to be. We have a very clear approach here in Dorset, which is you're safe in school and safe in school. And that absolute approach about our first principle, it links very much to the Pan Dorset Safeguarding Children's Partnership report that we've just seen, is that the safest place for our children is in school. And when it comes to our children with special educational needs, they're best off where we can, supporting them to stay in the mainstream. And I'm incredibly grateful and would just like to acknowledge the change that we've seen with our mainstream schools in the last year around the level of permanent exclusions, with a really significant drop-off. Almost 75% change into the positive of seeing far less permanent exclusions and far less fixed-term exclusions too. So an incredible partnership with our schools that's already delivering, but this package of support, and as absolutely as Councillor Fiery says, we'll need to be patient in our ambition, and we understand that, but really wanting to see this roll out across the whole county so all of the county's children can access the help they need to have their best education where they need that. I'll come to the corporate director, if I might, just for a bit of detail around how this will have a big impact on our children.
Thank you, Chair. We've been working very closely with our schools over the last couple of academic years since starting our strategy to develop these proposals and really to look across Dorset and both at the areas of need, but also the type of provision that we need in each of the parts of our county. And I think this represents a very close partnership working between our team and our schools and our property team together, but also some really exciting developments in the way that we will develop our provision over the coming years. We set off in 2020 on a significant analysis of the need and demand that we were forecasting over the next 5 years, working with our schools and also thinking about the children that we are supporting already. And at this point in time, we remain on track in terms of the forecasting that was done. It's an incredibly difficult area to forecast in, as Cabinet will be aware, but we remain on track and actually on a number of our targets. Inclusion, as Executive Director for Children said, it remains at the heart of our strategy. But also one of the key developments in this provision is the development of inclusion hubs, which will be provision which sits within mainstream schools to allow our children to remain in a mainstream environment but receive that specialist support where they need it. And we're also very proud of the work of all of our schools, but particularly our special schools, and recognising that they are good and outstanding and that a significant amount of the investment in these proposals are to expand their brilliant provision and the provision they provide every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teresa and Vic. Right, before I get back to the Cabinet, any non-Cabinet member wishing to comment on this report? I've got Stella, Paul, and then Tony.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't turn it on. It's very important that we are doing inclusion into mainstream schools, but a lot of our schools are academies. Now, I know academies, we're working well with most of our academies, but is there any way that we can persuade all academies to take in more children? And I know they're not excluding as many as they used to, but we are now asking them to take in more children with special educational needs.
Vic.
Thank you for the question. I'm pleased to say that we work very closely with our schools and academies, and particularly through the work of the Education Board, which was established last term under the chairmanship of the independent chair, Stephen Twigg, where academies are represented. In the way that we work with our schools across Dorset, the 159 schools, we work agnostically regardless of their governance. And the number of permanent exclusions that have come down, just to take one example, has come down uniformly across our schools, not just in maintained. So I hope that answers the question.
Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. One of the saddest things is that kids or young students that decide to skip school. And I was at a meeting yesterday where we were, if you like, dealing with this and the sadness that these young people are not entering the mainstream of education, which is going to affect them for the rest of their lives. And it's a pretty black and white question. Are we doing enough to try and locate these kids and trying to get them to try and get them into some sort of education? I know yesterday I was at a meeting where he was talking about home education and the high levels of home education there are around in some parts of Dorset. So if I could have that answer, I know it's a sort of a black and white question, but if you can try and give me some help on that one.
Andrew?
Yeah, if I could just take the political part of that question, and then I'll revert to the directors for the operational side of it. In respect of elective home education, which I think is what Councillor Kimber's referred to there, parents do have the right and the option to educate their child electively at home should they wish to do so. What we're very clear about, and I'm very pleased that we have not found evidence of that in Dorset, and is where a process of what's called off-rolling, which is where undue influence was being put on in some locations, I understand on a national basis, to encourage elective home education as a way of avoiding some form of exclusion. The view we've taken in Dorset is that actually our schools are far more proactive at trying to encourage children to remain in their school settings and whatever can be done. And we've encouraged things like cooling off periods when there is a period of notice being given to go to elective home education. So we are actively trying to ensure that if it's the right thing for a child to be home educated and that's the parents' wishes and there are successful examples of that, then we should be respectful of it. But equally, we shouldn't make an assumption that it's necessarily desirable for every child to go down that route or the right thing for them to do.
Vic, do you want to add anything?
Thank you. In terms of home education, echo the comments by Councillor Parry. I think also during the pandemic we did see a rise in families electing for home education. That has come back down to levels that we saw pre-pandemic. And that's really through a partnership approach that we've had with the families who are home educating, both in terms of working with them around suitability checks and making sure that education at home is suitable, but also in terms of sharing information with them and how to access tools to support good home education. In terms of children missing education, we work very closely with schools in terms of notifications and make sure that our teams are working with families in a holistic way, because quite often child missing education is not just about the child themselves, but also a piece of work that we need to do together, working with the family to reduce sometimes anxiety, sometimes need, and then in partnership with schools. We do that through the approach of inclusion, but also working together across our education and early help teams, and have very good communication with schools in that. But it is something that we are looking to strengthen, particularly this academic year. There's been a number of messages nationally, so a change in the attendance strategy nationally, which has been very helpful from central government, which we have a new strategy and plan for, but also under the work of the Education Board, where we are monitoring that very closely.
Very much, both of you. Tony Alford.
The purpose of my question is to say, yes, I understand what you're talking about in the paper, and it seems to be part of a generalised movement from external provision, which is expensive, to internal provision, where you have control on and you can save money. Now, I understand the logic of that. It does seem to me as though it rests on an assumption that there are a sufficient number of suitably qualified practitioners available. And I just wonder whether that assumption is reasonable.
Teresa?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, which is a really helpful opportunity really to talk about. We all know that there's some real challenges around workforce. And one of the things that we know in terms of having really listened carefully both to our own workforce here in Dorset Council Children's Services and our school workforce is that it's about having a really strong vision and also working on that retention and retainment and a really good learning and development offer. So we absolutely have as part of our original vision, don't we, for the Dorset Centre of Excellence, about that being a place to really develop both our own workforce and the workforce for the county and indeed the country around having that expertise. It's something that I've been very clear about. Sadly, there isn't actually a formal qualification for working with children with special educational needs across the country. We do very well in terms of the offer that's available to our staff, and certainly things like the STEPS programme, which help people to understand, our mantra would be that all behaviour is a communication. Some behaviours that are particularly bad don't feel like a communication, but they are. They're a communication of distress and trauma. And so our trauma-informed approach in school, which means that we understand where young people are bringing their distress to the classroom, and we understand how to work with that. It's work in progress. What we know is we'll be really successful with attracting people and retaining people by having that really good support offer for their learning and development too. Thank you.
Teresa. Simon Christopher. Thank you. Simon Christopher.
Following on from those excellent comments by Councillor Tony Alford, I would like to speak on a personal level about the Marshwood Vale, which I represent. I'm an advocate for the Marshwood Vale in a big way, and I'm conscious that Dorset Council is focusing more on mental health in the Marshwood Vale ward and also in relation to mental health issues. With respect to education, there are 3 primary schools in the Marshwood Vale ward, and I am a governor at one of them. I am conscious of the pressures on the high needs block. It's a shame that the member for Bedminster isn't here as well. If she was, I'm sure she would stress, as I have stressed in correspondence to many members in this chamber, the need for increased provision for the school, the special school in particular, Bedminster, the Mountjoy School, and I look forward to positive outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Just as Rebecca isn't here, I did visit Mountjoy School a couple of months ago when I did a ward visit to with Rebecca, so I do have a pretty good understanding, as I know colleagues involved in children's services have, with the challenges there.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. You and I have had probably some frank discussions over the last year or so, and I would like to put on record my thanks for your continuing interest in this last year in relation to the rural part of Dorset.
Thank you, Simon. Right. I don't see any other members that aren't on the Cabinet, so I'm going to go back to the Cabinet now. Andrew's got his hand up.
Thank you. I was just going to pick up on the comments from Councillor Christopher there and others. Thank you for your contributions to this debate on this matter. I can assure you that Councillor Knox is a very strong advocate for the Mountjoy School. She takes great pride in her role as a part of the governing board there and as the local member. And I know from your visit and my own visits to Mountjoy, it's an exceptional school that provides fantastic care and educational opportunity for children and young people. But it is a popular choice, and that popular choice has meant it has reached capacity and therefore considerations. In respect, I think you raise a very fair point over rural educational needs and how we meet particularly the social and emotional well-being of children and young people in rural areas. It's an area that's often overlooked in larger national discussions. The focus always seems to be about inner city areas of deprivation. Well, we need to recognise that actually in some of those rural areas, it can be very isolating for children and young people. And in respect, and I know Councillor Bryan and I have had many conversations on this, in respect of things like transport links for them to be able to access things such as youth provision and other facilities, which is so important for their developmental needs. As you would expect me to say, Chair, we have to have a very robust conversation with some of our partner organisations in ensuring that we see the funding required for things like the CAM service for children and young people, because frankly, we have to recognise that there is a national shortage and a regional shortage of suitable provision for those that require things such as Tier 4 beds to address the most urgent of mental health needs and well-being.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other member of the Cabinet. Can I just confirm that you proposed the recommendation, Tony, did you? Because I need it for the benefit of the records. Yes? Oh.
Yes. I'm very happy to second the proposal.
Otherwise, I shall have Kate after me because I didn't clarify that point. Ray.
Yes, before we move off on this one, I'd just like to point out that Section 8 of the report again is climate implications, and the beauty of bringing schools more local to those residents that actually need them will have a tremendous influence on the climate. It will also reduce our costs, because currently the SEN travel is costing us 12.3 million, and sorry to say we're going to be way above that number by the time we get to the end of the year because of the pressure that is on travel. I would like to say publicly just how well the travel team and the team that Andrew works with they're working so closely together to try and get the plans working correctly. In as much as last night I received a report of our first day of having the new school runs out, we received just 2 emails where there'd been problems. And that's a fantastic bit of work done by both teams to make sure that we got a very good lift-off on this. It's no secret that the total budget on which includes public transport is 24 million. Half of it goes, above half of it goes on the special educational needs. I am under a terrible pressure, tremendous pressure at the moment from the bus companies who want to eliminate some of their less profitable routes, and we're currently going out to tender on a number of routes that have been passed back to us. The bad news is that the percentage increase on some of these returns is extremely high. So I've asked the travel team to look at every way possible of getting these numbers down. But the report to me is absolutely excellent, has my full support, and I look forward to being able to report at a future date we've managed to reduce the travel budget down because of the actions taken. And this should form part of the business plan going forward, because it's actually a saving which will offset some of the costs. So I suggest that our 2 teams get their heads together to work out what that potential cost saving could be. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Ray. And for the benefit of the public then, does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations? No, I'm not going to let you come back, Paul. Recommendations set out in the report. In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, recommendations are approved. You can have a conversation, perhaps beyond the meeting, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 11, Redland Community Sports Hub Lease Management Arrangements. I'm going to invite Tony Ferrari to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. When the college decided that they could not make a success of Redlands, I was not optimistic about the way forward. It had been running for a long time. It wasn't. The building was in poor condition. There weren't a very large number of service users. And I have to say, I've been absolutely delighted by the group of people who've come together, and there are thanks to councillors in the room for their own particular work on this. I've been absolutely delighted by the way different groups of people have come together, and all of them have put themselves in places where they're uncomfortable to get a really excellent solution for this building. So Dorset Council is being asked today to contribute our share of this process, but we need to thank Active Dorset, who are a fantastic charity who are looking to run the building. We need to thank the service users who are going to be asked to change the way they operate to work with this environment. And we need to thank Weymouth Council because they are going to contribute their part of this scheme. So overall, I'm delighted that we're bringing this forward because it's a really good example of all of the community coming together to deal with a problem that otherwise would have fallen away. So I'm delighted by what's been brought forwards. But as I said last time, we're not about buildings, we're about service delivery. So I probably should hand over this time to Laura to talk about the service implications.
So for clarity, moving the recommendation, Laura Miller. Laura, I'm going to get used to Laura Beddoe eventually.
I'll answer to both. I'm absolutely delighted to second the recommendations. I would just mention that the Place and Resources Overview Committee have given this a really good going over and actually contributed really well to this. I'll just echo Tony's words that a lot of groups of people, a lot of organisations have put themselves in perhaps uncomfortable positions. We've all worked really well together. And actually, when we look at our wider leisure services and our leisure use as an authority, I think this is a really good way of looking at what can be achieved, if everybody actually throws their hat into the ring. So I would also mention that the new way of groups and clubs using Redlands has started. I have not had a deluge in my inbox of people objecting. So I would say tentatively that it's working and that I'm really pleased that it's working. And again, just to echo Tony's comments to Councillors Barrow and Gray, because we really did have some tricky situations, but I think we got past it. So thank you, Chair. I'm really happy to second.
Much, Laura. Before I open up to the Cabinet, Pete.
Morning all. I'd just like to echo those comments really. It was a difficult situation. Redlands has got an enormously long history. It goes right back to the war. It's hugely valued by the community. Lots of people really wanted it to stay open. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to everyone who's come together to formulate the plan to keep it going. It's been a brilliant example of partnership working to get a difficult problem solved. So I'm really, really pleased about that. I've spoken at length to Martin Kimberley from Active Dorset, and so I understand what they're going to try and do, and I've got great confidence that they can deliver that. So that's, the future is sound as long as the residents continue to support it and use it. So that's vitally important. And I was going to say something else, but I've lost it in my notes, so I'll stop there and just say thank you very much. Oh, please support it.
Thank you very much. Any other non-Cabinet member wishing to comment? If not, I'll move to Paul.
I would just like to note my thanks for all the work that has gone in on all sides to work to get this valuable centre up and keep it up and running. And from my side, I think we've done very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul and Pete, for your constructive comments. Really helpful. Thank you. I can't see anybody else. Cabinet colleagues, any comments beyond what's already been said? Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendation Senate report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 12 now, and I think it's Laura.
Thank you, Chair. Just go with Laura. It's easier. So I'm really pleased to present this report today for adoption. This is a revised policy on archaeological fieldwork and metal detecting on council land. The previous policy was adopted in 1996 and it related only to metal detecting on Dorset County farms. So it is now firmly out of date. The report in Appendix A, together with the draft policy, was presented to Place and Resources Overview on the 28th of July and is now recommended to Cabinet for approval as outlined in the report. So this will encompass all Dorset Council-owned land, which now includes country parks, playgrounds, highways, verges, and it will include requests for access to land for a greater range of archaeological activity. It also will ensure that activities are carried out legally to appropriate standards and complying with health and safety and safeguarding rules, which is really important. As in the previous policy, archaeological activity is not permitted on council land unless approved by the Historic Environment Record Team in consultation with the relevant tenant or council officer managing the land. Application for written approval can be made by individuals, small groups, or responsible bodies like universities, clubs, societies. And applicants will have to meet certain criteria, which includes demonstrating awareness of the relevant legislation and a good track record of archaeological activity to the appropriate standard, adhering to any special conditions relating to the site. As you would expect, all fines remain the property of Dorset Council, and if granted, permission will be for a specific site and area and for a specified time, so we won't grant blanket permission. Archaeological investigations will be prohibited on some sites, such as sites of special scientific interest, and research or field work by archaeological building specialists or archaeological contractors undertaken as part of the planning process or commissioned by Dorset Council as the landowner are specifically excluded from this policy. And I have to say that the group of people that this really affects and refers to are by and large a great group of people who are sort of largely, if you like, self-policing and self-managing, but we do have to have a policy that supports and encourages the work that they do as non-professionals and the work that is really, really valuable. I mean, it's a personal interest of mine, and I'm really happy to recommend this to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. I seek a seconder. Seconded by Tony Ferrari. Any non-Cabinet member wishing to comment? No? Cabinet colleagues. Tony.
Yeah. Sorry?
Thank you. As assets portfolio holder, this activity will occur on lots of our land. The nature of the role of metal detectorists has changed since '96. And now they're firmly embraced by the archaeological community as a valuable contribution to the exploration, the history of archaeological sites and Dorset in particular. And this is an opportunity for us to embrace those people, bring them into the fold so that we work with them to create a better outcome for archaeology in Dorset. And I welcome the proposals greatly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Any other member of the Cabinet wishing to comment? Now, does any member disagree with the recommendation of that report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We now go on to Dorset Council plan priorities, and item 13 is an update on library strategy. Laura.
Thank you. This is an ongoing piece of work. We are updating our library strategy. It's over 11 years old, so we're developing a new one. It'll shape how we develop and deliver our Dorset Council-run library service over the next 10 years. So it's a decent chunk of time. We've got 2 phases of public consultation. Phase 1, Let's Talk Libraries, was taking place in October last year to January this year. It was an open conversation with our communities, employees, partners, to understand what they really value about our service, how we could do things differently, how we could develop our service, and how we could become relevant to non-library users. We received actually over 7,500 survey responses, which was brilliant. And we also did a range of engagement workshops. So I'd like to thank everybody that contributed to all of those during phase 1. We do have the analysis now for the phase 1 consultation, and it's on our Let's Talk Libraries webpage. So I would urge everyone to go and have a look at that because it's really interesting. We've developed a draft strategy, and the mission that came very strongly out of the phase 1 consultation was to inspire, connect, and enable our communities through our services. All of those documents, the supporting documents and the draft library strategy are publicly available following their consideration by a joint overview committee at the end of June. We're now preparing to launch the next phase of consultation, and that will ask our communities for their help in prioritising the strategy aims so we can understand what's most important to them, as well as what could the delivery look like in the future. We plan to launch the phase 2 Let's Talk Libraries consultation within the next month. It will include a children's survey, a public survey, and an employee and partner survey. As we did during phase 1, we'll also run some engagement workshops because that really helps to add depth to the data that we get. I'm really grateful to the cross-party steering group because we meet regularly and they really help to shape and guide this work. It's really important, and thank you for their support. So we'll have a library strategy update for members at the end of September. We'll have a 12-week second phase of Let's Talk Libraries consultation. That will have a wide-ranging comms campaign. We'll also have stakeholder briefings. Then we'll analyse the results, and hopefully we'll return to the Joint Overview Committee in early 2023, which will then move to Cabinet to sign off, and hopefully that will happen in the spring of 2023. So that's just setting out where we are with this really important piece of work, because we all love our libraries, and some of the next steps and timescale. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for a very upbeat overview of what's happening with libraries and the strategy and where we're going forward with it. Agenda item 14 is an update on portfolio holders, and I know a number of you have submitted your updates. Thank you very much for that. But I know Jill specifically wants to pick out a couple of bits from hers that she feels quite excited about, I think. Jill.
Thanks, Spencer. It's really good to finish on a bit of upbeat stuff, isn't it? So what I want to talk about today is some of the digital stuff we do, which always seems to be a bit hidden and behind the scenes, and yet we punch way above our weight in Dorset on what we do here. So I just want to go through a little bit of what is happening and what has happened. So last Wednesday was the first award of Project Gigabit, which is a $5 billion government project. Wessex Internet won the bid for more than 7,000 hard-to-reach premises, struggling with slow internet speeds in North Dorset. We've been working really closely with British Digital and with Wessex on the bids that we've got in this area. They will be connected under a £6 million contract award. And the project will specifically cover the rural outskirts of towns and villages and hamlets, the really little places, the hard-to-reach places. And this was the first announced award of the new phase of this Project Gigabit, and came with a last-minute visit by Boris Johnson to Dorset to meet Wessex Internet, which is a real surprise because we weren't expecting that at all. Gigabit broadband speeds can provide speeds of more than 1,000 megabits per second, which is 30 times faster than your superfast. And now the contract in Dorset has been awarded, Dorset Council will be working with Wessex and British Digital to begin planning the construction of the gigabit-capable network. That's quite difficult to say. The fibre has a life expectancy of over 100 years. We're in the running for other bids in this round of rollouts. So it's coming over several years, but we're hoping we're going to be successful, although I think the change in who's in doing what at government is going to just slow down those announcements. And next year, we're hoping that we will be successful in a similar bid for the west of the county. Then, Leader wants to just come on to a bit of a roundup on 5G rural Dorset. This was a groundbreaking research and development project that we were really lucky to win and has had a huge and long-lasting effect in Dorset. Began in March 2020 when the DCMS funded the project. It was led by us and it ends this September. With a series of extensions to the original funding, the final value coming into this county and Dorset Council area was £9 million. But the legacy is much more than that. Throughout the project, there was an emphasis on exploring ways in which the next generation of connectivity could benefit people who live and work in Dorset. The research conducted was designed with those people in rural areas at its heart, and the programme sought to provide innovative solutions for connectivity in the hard-to-reach areas. The Rural Community Accelerator research was led by Vodafone and provided public 5G connectivity from a site in the village of Worth Matravers. The site has become part of Vodafone's public network, providing essential voice and data services for residents, businesses and visitors. The site also provides connectivity for previous not-spot O2 customers and the 99 services because although it was a popular tourist spot, you couldn't get 999. It's really dangerous. Partnership approach using public sector-owned assets to help Vodafone UK deliver. And it's delivered the fastest ever site build in a rural area and done by Vodafone and will provide a useful model for UK telecom systems going forward. Connect Dorset was a work stream led by Accelerate Technology to provide private 5G connectivity along a large section of the Jurassic Coast. The network will continue to support 5G at sea and how next generation connectivity can support increasingly important aquaculture sector in Dorset, which has been identified by government as a high potential opportunity. And it will also continue to serve the Lulworth first responders, because before that, they had no connectivity. And the equipment they use also in coastal public safety in that area. The Innovative Accelerator provided both indoor and outdoor 5G standalone networks, which were secure at the Dorset Innovation Park. During the lifetime of the project, it was designed to help co-creation of space for defence innovation. The park was also chosen as a site for the Ministry of Defence Battle Lab, and Vodafone provided the secure 5G standalone network located in the Defence Innovation Workshop. And this network will remain in place, so this is another legacy. The future of food research was led by Wessex Internet and provided new 5G connectivity across clusters of agriculture and aquaculture farms. The workstream also used Vodafone's existing coverage to connect sensors across farms, as well as several private 5G networks. And the purpose of this research was to prove that by using next-generation connectivity, modern farming can be productive as well as environmentally friendly. The networks will be left in place with view to further commercial research and development, and we're working closely with colleagues in this area to see of what more we can bring to Dorset, because this has made a real big difference. As a council, we can be really proud of the work that's undertaken by our teams and partners, and this project has had a profound impact on the county, from providing enhanced connectivity in remote areas to opening new avenues of employment and innovation. It really has put Dorset on the map as a forward-thinking region, and I can't wait to see what we do next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. And there are no urgent items or exempt business this morning, so I'm going to bring this meeting to a close. And as I do, I just remind everybody that I've said many times that I'm an advocate for Dorset. I think we all are in this room. But I should be writing to the new Prime Minister, and as soon as we know the appointments, Secretaries of State and appropriate ministers, to make sure we get the case for Dorset in front of the new team that are going to be leading this country going forward. So that'll happen over probably the next week or so. But I just wanted you to be aware that we are on it, and we're going to be not assuming anything. We're going to retrack and re-emphasise the importance of Dorset in the eyes of government. Thank you very much, everybody.